Powered by Early Ball, the colors of rock and roll.
Hey there, readers, listeners, and fellow guitar players. I'm Alex, here with Charlie Starr from Blackberry Smoke, who just released their new album, You Hear Georgia. And Charlie, first of all, congratulations on the new album. I think it's sick. There's really great stuff on there. And also, I feel like it's one of your most diverse albums yet. So maybe you could talk a little bit about like during what time frame and how the songs came to be that ended up on the album. Was there anything different than like your approach on the last ones?
Thank you, first of all.
Sure.
The approach was a little different at times. Some of the songs were written during lockdown, back in March and April. I had a bunch of songs written ready to go into the studio in March. That was the initial plan. And we were all sent home, thanks to COVID. So while at home, I was in touch with a handful of friends, and we decided to write some songs because we couldn't leave our houses. So I think that happened a lot in the music business. I think a lot of people got together and collaborated via FaceTime or Zoom. Yeah. And so I wrote a couple of songs with an old friend named Dave Lismy, who was in a band called the Four Horsemen years ago. And one with, or a couple with Keith Nelson, who was in Buck Cherry, one with Warren Haynes from Government Mule, Allman Brothers, one with a friend named Nick Perry. And I think it was just, we were bored guitar players first, and then all these songs started to happen. And I got really excited and thought, well, these songs are really good. And then it was decided, I was on the phone with Dave Cobb, and we had planned to record in March, and that got pushed back. And it kind of shuffled everything, not everything, but I said, hey, I got all these new songs we've been writing with my buddies, and I would send him demos, just acoustic demos, and he was excited too. And so we finally went into the studio at the end of May, and we had 10 days because of the scheduling. Dave said, I have 10 days now. We did have a month. Now we have 10 days can we make a record in 10 days? But
like excluding mixing, just the recordings, right?
No, including mixing.
Oh, wow. Okay.
5 days to track, 5 days to mix. And we went into it with not feeling any pressure. It was like, hey, we're in, the world's in a mess. Let's just see what we can accomplish. And we had a day to spare. We got it all tracked. And we actually took the weekend off between the 2 5-day periods, and came back and mixed it, and had a day extra. So
that's incredible. Well, that's really like fast working speed.
It was. We only picked. One thing we didn't load ourselves down with work. We chose 10 songs out of the 15 to 20, whatever the pile. We chose what we felt were the I can't say best 10, but the ones that we thought flowed best. And I thought, this is a good album, and that's what we did. We wound up actually recording 11, so there's one outtake.
I see.
It'll come out sometime.
Right. Now the album also features like a lot of the more groovy, like heavy guitar riff side of the band. And I remember, like you told me some time ago that you often write like with an acoustic guitar, the songs, and then put it in the band context. Was that different as well this time around? Was there more electric guitar? Because I could imagine writing a riff you only ever hear how it's gonna sound on the album when you play it with an electric guitar, right?
Yeah, I think a little of both, because I did have a lot of electric guitars at home, from as far as the pandemic. And so when time would allow, I would rattle the windows in here. So especially the song with Warren Haynes, that was never even thought of on the acoustic guitar. It was a great big riff from the beginning, and that's how it stayed.
So that's the song he plays on as well as you guys wrote together, I would imagine.
Yeah, he plays and sings on it.
And you also, as a band, you produced your last 2 albums yourselves. So if I might ask, what brought you to working with Dave Kopp this time around?
Well, I'd actually been talking with Dave for the last few years about making an album, and our schedules never lined up until last year.
Mm.
And we actually we got on the phone earlier in the year, and he said, "Let's do it." And I said, "Let's do it." So we made the last two times I spoke to him before that, actually, he'd say, "You want to make a record?" And I'd say, "We just did."
All right.
Our schedules finally lined up.
So how was the whole recording process like with Dave? And also I would imagine like all of that happened during the pandemic, as you said. So were there any annoying restrictions and stuff like that you had to work around with when you went into the studio, because you were a lot of people working on those albums?
Well, we were waiting, when we initially postponed, it was really scary and nobody knew, what was up and what was down. And eventually, when it came, close to the end of May or whatever the day was we started, I remember talking to Dave and he said, "Hey man, I'm ready if you guys are comfortable. It's myself and one engineer, and RCA Studio A, where he operates, is huge."
Yeah.
He said, "The room is big enough where we never have to be within 10 feet of each other,
Mm.
and we won't kiss and hug."
Too bad.
So that I think we made sure that everybody in our band was comfortable with, leaving home, and we just went and did the thing, and everybody stayed healthy and it was good.
Cool. So the collaborations on the album, like you mentioned Warren Haynes and Jamie Johnson, another one who's singing on the album, that just came out of you writing with those guys, and that's the songs that ended up there.
Yeah, except for Jamie, I wrote that song alone, but we were playing a show with him a couple of years ago, and we've been friends for a long time, and we're hanging around and catching up, and he said, "At some point, let's record another song," because we did one with him, 10 years ago. We recorded a song called "Yesterday's Wine" with Jamie and George Jones, and I said, "Hey, I've got a song. I wrote it with George Jones in mind. It's kind of a tribute or a tip of the cap to a country singer, the life of a honky-tonk singer, sad song singer." And anyway, I sent it to Jamie. I said, "You want to record this one?" And he said, "Absolutely." So he came, and that's how that came about.
Cool. So I would imagine that on the song "All Rise Again," which is the song that features Warren Haynes, like he plays all those 6 slide guitars, right?
Yeah, he plays.
Right. But you also play a lot of slide guitar on this album, and various songs, like in the solos, also in the rhythm stuff as well. And I was wondering, Morningside, for example, and You Had Georgia as well, the title track. So what is it about playing slide that like appeals to you as a guitarist?
I don't know. I've always loved it. It's something that I heard as a kid and wanted to emulate. You hear that, whether it's Duane Allman or Lowell George or Robert Johnson. Or Son House, there's so many different ways to approach the slide guitar, but I always really thought it was interesting, and also really into country music, the steel guitar, just the sound of that. It's that kind of has a weeping, somber kind of thing. But there's a lot of slide guitar on the album. A lot of it is Benji Shanks, who joins us on the full album as well. So there's plenty of slide guitar to go around on this one.
So did you start like practicing and doing that like early in your life as a guitar player, let's say? Because like I personally found I could never get into it because it's so hard to like control the tone. It's completely different than playing with the fingers. Like, do you have any tips for maybe some newbies who want to learn that stuff and just feel like I just can't do it?
Yeah, be patient. It's you're exactly right. It's not easy. I think you just have to really, really want to do it, and get by yourself, because if your girlfriend or wife is in the room, they may scream at you. Stop what you're doing. Paul, our other guitar player, a couple of years ago, he came into sound check with a slide, and I'd never seen him play slide, and I've known him since we were 18 years old. And he put it on. I said, "What are you doing?" And he gave up. He's like, "I've never tried to do this." And exactly what you said, it's not something that most people can just jump right into. It takes we have to get comfortable, because you can't let, every string ring freely. You have to learn how to mute with the skin of your thumb or here, or even these fingers. You have to learn to quiet the strings that you don't want to make noise.
Sure. Now, there was another song that stood out to me on the album, which is old enough to know it's one of the most intimate songs on the album, I would say. And you have a lot of, the reason it stood out to me were actually the lyrics. You have a lot of, let's call it day-to-day wisdom in those lyrics. Like there was this one line that kind of cracked me up, was "never trust a grown man with a nickname." So could you talk a little bit about where those lyrics come from?
Well, that song, first of all, that song is completely live.
Okay.
There's no overdub, vocal, drum, everything is live.
Cool.
And that was only the second or third take. And we had planned to, well, not planned, but when you track something like that, you think, yeah, let's add some pedal steel or some harmonica, and Dave Cobb said, "That's it. That's the song. Don't change the vocal, nothing." So the lyrics, though, well, specifically that one, "Never trust a grown man with a nickname." That's a motto that I've had for a while, because working in the music business, there's a lot of nicknames. Even mine is, but there's an inside joke with the band. We would have somebody that worked with us where it seemed like the guys with nicknames were always trouble.
I see. Good to know. I'll remember that. I remember that. But maybe let's talk here a little bit. Like in the video you did for "You Hear Georgia," the title track. Like we can once see you with your old Les Paul Jr. You're still playing, I see. But also you were playing a Flying V, and I think that's new, right?
Yeah, that one actually belongs to Dave Cobb, and it's a replica. But he had us all fooled for an hour because it looks like a real 1958 V. I forget who built it, but it's incredible. But I played it when we first started to track the song, and then I put it down and played an ES330, a 64 ES330.
Mm-hmm. So what other guitars are there on the album? Did you use like the whole part that you have? Everything?
Yeah, we brought our guitars, and Dave's got tons too, and it's the laundry list. But I used a 65 Esquire quite a bit, Fender Esquire single pickup, Telecaster guitar. I used that 330 a lot. I used a couple of juniors, a 59 double cut Cherry Junior, and a 58 TV Yellow single cut Junior, and a 57 Tobacco, and my old black guitar, which is a 56.
Yeah.
And for the first time on a Blackberry Smoke album, there's a Rickenbacker. No, actually, it's not the first time. We had one on the last album too, but there's an old Rose Morris Rickenbacker.
Not a bass, a guitar.
Guitar, yeah.
Yeah, cool.
But no Strats. Once again, no Strats.
Huh. So how's that like in the studio? Like, because you have all these guitars, do you just like pick one up, play the track, and go, let me try that again with another one, and like go through all of them?
That's exactly.
Because that takes time, right? And you only had like 10 days.
Well, we didn't go through all of them, but I think, sometimes you look at a guitar and you think about a riff and you think that would sound good on that, because that's a P90, or that's a humbucker, or that's a single coil. You can usually kind of already hear it,
Yeah, and you also know the instruments. You know how it's going to sound like at the end.
More importantly, I think, is the guitar and amp relationship. That's usually you're like, I'm playing this song on this guitar. I've decided. So now let me find the right amp.
So how did you go about that? What amps are on the album?
Same thing, trial and error.
Trial and error. Also, Dave's stuff within there.
Yeah. He made a point to tell me on the telephone before we drove up to start. He said, "You don't have to bring anything. Everything." And he does. But I didn't hear that. I took tons and tons of shit. So
Okay.
we had a ball.
Nice. What about effects? Like, because I know there's some fuss in there, but other than that, it's pretty basic, right?
Yeah, there's fuzz on a couple of things. There's echoplex on a couple of things.
Mm-hmm.
I used a 65 black panel Fender Deluxe reverb. Used that reverb a lot. Just
Mm-hmm.
the stock Fender, reverb tank in the amp. And then also we had a brown Fender reverb unit that we used with Marshalls and things like that.
Something we haven't touched on, actually, there were some more guys on the album or girls, actually, the Blackberries, I think they're called, which are handling background vocals. And you worked with them before, right? So how did that all start?
I met them through an engineer in Atlanta on our last album, Find a Light. I asked him if he knew any female singers, harmony singers, and he said, "Boy, do I!" And he called them, and they came in. And they're sisters, they're twins, and they're fantastic. That I don't even ever have to discuss with them what the song needs. They hear it and they start to feel it, and then they just start. They know that it's just like. It's instinct with them. They know where to sing and where not to. It's
incredible because especially like harmonics, doing that with the vocals, it's so hard to do for everyone to like keep their pitch and everything.
Yeah, they're perfect. And in fact, Dave, when we were listening to as we would record each song, I would say, this one has to have girls. And this one, and he'd say, yeah. And he said, I got some girls one day. And I said, you probably do, but I bet they're not better than the girls that I know.
Mm-hmm. So did you also tour together? Were they with you on stage, or was it always just an album thing?
They've never toured with us. They've done shows in Atlanta or Nashville.
Yeah.
They've done several of those shows, but they have their own band. So
yeah, of course.
Maybe they'll break up their band and come join our band.
Sure, why not? Speaking of touring, like I know that you're a band that you really built yourself on touring and basically being on tour throughout the year, every year. So we touched on it earlier. The pandemic made that impossible. How did you as a band handle the whole situation? Because you just can't go out on stage anymore right now.
Well, it's been tough. We luckily have been playing shows now because a lot of states in the US are a little more open. And so a lot of outdoor events are happening. And that's been good. We couldn't do it when the weather was cold for obvious reasons. But yeah, you're right. For 9 months, we didn't play on stage at all. And then we finally started to do some live stream events in empty venues. And that's really strange. It feels like rehearsal with a suit and tie on,
Yeah, sure.
But I mean, we had to adapt like everybody else and find new ways to do it. We're still kind of doing that. We play in a lot of shows that are socially distanced in limited capacity. So from a financial standpoint, it's tough because you can't make as much money because they can't sell as many tickets. So the model is completely different. But at one point, money or not, you say, I want to play.
Yeah.
So let's go play.
Yeah. And I'm also, as a consumer, listener, whatever, I'm really happy if my favorite bands like do streaming concerts and I can like catch a new video of some recording in a studio somewhere, because here in Germany, a lot of my favorite bands are from America and they just don't come here right now.
Yeah.
In America, there's some concerts that's great, but I can see them live and you really hunger for it. You notice how much it's missing from your life. So that's really cool. But for the artists, I would imagine it's really strange, like you said, being in an empty room, and you really realize how important the feedback of the audience is, because you can't see their faces, you can't hear, like, are they screaming positively, negatively, whatever.
Right. It's different. From my personal experience, I can't speak for anyone else, but myself, but it forced us inward, and we played for each other. which is the way it all starts with a band. You know, you're playing to and for one another. And I've never stopped loving playing Blackberry Smoke music because we all love it so much, but it reminded me so many times where I think I'm focusing on what we're all doing more since there's no audience. And I just love what we do.
Mm. Did you also notice, like you said, you weren't on stage for 9 months or so, like a drop in, I don't know, performance level or whatever, because like you had to be like so in tune with each other, being on the road all the time, and then it suddenly stops and you come back to a rehearsal room like a month later and what's that riff again? I can't remember.
Yeah, totally. We had to rehearse, and I was reminded that, you know, singing for 2 hours requires a lot of wind.
Mm-hmm.
And I had gotten out of shape singing. And it was like, oh my God, I need a break. Hold on. I'm not 26 anymore. I'm 46. So yeah,
you really have to keep the voice in shape because it's such a personal instrument that's connected to your body that you can't just do it like piano or a guitar, whatever.
It is like a muscle, or a set of muscles. And if you don't, you know, I remember the first night we came back after not playing, and the first long rehearsal we had, I was really hoarse after one 2 hour period, and thought, oh, okay. I had to knock the rust off. Well,
Charlie, thank you so much for taking the time today to talk to us. I really hope you're going to be back everywhere really soon, but let's see what happens. And till then, take care.
You too. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Powered by Early Ball, the colors of rock and roll.